Do you want to experience maximum success when it comes to trout trolling? If you do, integrate trolling flies into your arsenal. Go on over to fishhuntshoot.com and pick up one of Cal Kellogg's Signature Series trolling fly kits today, and you'll be yelling "Fish on" tomorrow. Fish on, right there, baby. Woohoo, yeah. Oh, he's airborne right away. Wow, he's running. He's tearing off line. Wow. He's not happy. Can't see as I blame him. Fighting as hard as they are, it's hard to tell if you got a big fish or average size fish or what the deal is. That fly was about 2 feet deep. And he hit it a couple times. Miss, and then hook up. What a fighter. You know, the water's cold. They got a lot of stamina when the conditions are like this, and they're just a lot of fun. I see him back there swimming on the surface. I can keep him down. I don't want to lose him. This isn't a fly fishing channel. We're keeping these fish. At least we are today. Big old fish. Ugh. He just came up and rolled in that line. Well, there's that big old rainbow. He must have taken a knot tying class because he had that line wrapped all around his body, around his head. It was something to see. It took me about 10 minutes to get everything back in order again. We'll get him on the stringer. That's 4 fish that I've kept, and we'll hold out for a big one to finish out our limit here today. Got about an hour and a half left to troll, but that's just an incredible rainbow. A couple pounds, probably pushing 20 inches. Just another handsome fish at Lake Davis. That's what you come up here for, and we're really lucky this fall. The weather's mild, the surface temperature is cool but not freezing, and these big boys are on the bite. That one slammed one of my orange trolling flies. Hi guys, Cal Kellogg here. Today, I want to talk about trolling flies. I want to show you my flies. These are my flies for the 2021 season. This is my personal fly box. I've got flies in here in all shapes, sizes, colors, just about everything you can imagine. They're all beautiful, they're all awesome, and they have a lot of potential to catch me a lot of big fish. Being a guy that trolls flies a lot, and there's not a lot of us out there. There's a lot of guys that pull spoons and a lot of guys that pull plugs, but there's not a lot of guys that consistently pull flies. Well, being one of those guys, I get a lot of questions about fly trolling. People see me, catching fish on the channel on flies. They buy my fly kits, and then they've got some follow-up questions about how to actually put those flies to use out on the water. And one of the most common questions is, what size fly do I use? And there's a couple factors that go into that decision. Let's take a couple flies and use them as an example. On the large end of the spectrum, you could be pulling a big old rainbow trout imitation like this. This fly is about 3.5 inches long. It's jointed. It's kind of a fly that you would use in the same situation when you would put on a Rapala. You're at a lake, maybe it has big browns, big rainbows. You want to show them something big. You want to show those big predators a big meal, so you put on that jointed fly and you start working the structure, and you're hoping to, tease one of those big fish into making a mistake. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, you might rig up with something like that. This is a J-Fair trolling fly. It's just a small, slender marabou minnow imitation. And of course, when that gets wet, it's going to suck down into a very slim minnow shape, very subtle, and at times it can be very deadly. So how do I choose, which fly to use at which time in terms of size? And as I said, there's a couple factors that go into that. One is having an idea of how large the fish run in the lake you're fishing. Let's take Sugar Pine Reservoir for example. You see me fishing that quite a bit here on the channel. average fish in that lake is a rainbow that's 12 to 14 inches long, and about the biggest trout I've ever caught there is 20 inches long. So there's just not fish in that lake that are 7, 8, 9, 10 pounds. So I'm not going to rig up with that rainbow trout imitation. I'm going to rig up with a small to medium sized fly. I'm going to match the fly to the size of the fish that I know inhabit the lake. Elminor, that's a whole nother story. There's 10, 12, 14 pound browns in Elminor, and there's 6, 7, 8, 10 pound rainbows in the lake. So sky's the limit in terms of fly size up there. If I think the trout are aggressive, if I think they're looking to feed, I could put on that big jointed rainbow imitation and troll it with confidence, knowing that there are fish around that will easily inhale that fly if they're in the mood to go. So, tailor the size of your flies to the size of the fish in the lake you're fishing. So it takes a little homework, might take a little experience. Usually guys aren't fishing a new lake every time they go, so you've got some base knowledge of what, exists in the lakes that you're fishing. The second factor is the forage base of the lake. If you're at a lake where the fish feed heavily on pond smelt or threadfin shad, you might be pulling something like this awesome shad and smelt imitation right there. You might be pulling something like that. Now, all the fish in the lake, if there's a big population of say, threadfin shad, say you're at Lake Shasta, all the fish in the lake, they're going to feed mostly on shad. Whether it's an 8-pound rainbow or a 14-inch rainbow, they're all feeding on shad. That's what they expect to see. That's what they expect to feed on. So it bodes well for you to match the size and the shape of the forage that the fish feed on. And that's the case in most bait fish driven lakes, most valley reservoirs. They're bait fish driven, and all the fish feed on the same bait fish. Having said that though, when I start out the day, I do like to run a size or two larger than the bait that I think exists in the lake. And the reason for that is simple. I'm looking for a big fish that's willing to chase, one that's looking for, a large meal. They're expecting to feed on shad, but if they see a shad that's a little bit bigger than the rest of the shad, I think that could tip the odds in my favor in terms of hooking a larger than average fish. Now, there's some point where you try a larger fly, maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, maybe it works early and then the bite slacks off. I approach that situation with flies in just the same manner as I would with lures. I start off big and fast with flies. That means a fly that's a couple sizes bigger than the forage in the lake. I'll start off at 2 to 2.2, maybe up to 2.4 miles an hour. But then, if the fish tell me that that's not working, or it was working and it's not working anymore, I start to downsize and I start to slow down. I don't go from large to the smallest fly in my box. I go from large to kind of medium size to smaller size, and I start to reduce my speed. I go from the 2 mile an hour range to that 1.5 to 1.8, and then if I have to downsize some more, I might be fishing in that 1 to 1.5 speed range. This is the same thing I advocate doing with spoons and plugs. If the bite is tough or if the bite slows down, start downsizing, start slowing down, and you're going to reach a point where you start getting hit again. At that point, you can make minor adjustments that often pay, big dividends. You might go from an orange fly to a red fly. You might go from an all-white fly to a fly that has blue on the back, something like that. Those little tweaks can mean the difference between catching a whole bunch of fish and just having a fair to average day. So, to recap, when you hit the lake, you need to have, and it doesn't matter if you're trolling flies or plugs or spoons or whatever, you need to have an idea of what the forage base is in the lake, and you need to have an idea of how large the fish in the lake run, and let that information guide your lure selection. And again, that applies to flies, it applies to spoons, it applies to plugs. Ultimately, you're going to have the best success matching the hatch. That's what fly fishermen do. Figure out what the fish feed on most often and show them something that mimics that food source. They're going to mistake it for live bait, and you're gonna have a fish at the end of your line. I hope this clears up some of the questions about fly size, and fly colors definitely, fall within that category. If you're at a lake that has a bunch of threadfin shad or pond smelt, it only makes sense to start out with something in that color scheme and then break out the bright stuff if and when you have to. And of course, the one thing that can override all of this is experience. Time on the water, it teaches you a lot about what's going on. It gives you the ability to anticipate what's going to work at a given time, at a given spot. So, all those factors come to play. I hope this has kind of cleared up the thoughts about size, a little bit about the thoughts about color, how to select flies, how to go through the progression of large to small, fast to slow, all that kind of stuff. Anyway, I've rambled long enough. Those are my thoughts about fly size. I will catch you next time right here on YouTube. And if you're looking for trolling flies, rods, reels, and more, you know where to go. FishHuntShoot.com, guys. I look forward to seeing you in the near future right here on YouTube. You have a wonderful day and stay safe out there.